So in many ways, this business was a platform for us to connect post the death of my sister,
Mhm.
in a way for me to help kind of keep my dad in the world. And one of my favorite examples is there was a conference many years ago where a gentleman on the stage said, "Hey, if we, practice the values as my mom thought about them in 1967,
Mhm.
we would be in so many lawsuits today."
Welcome to Business in Families, the podcast where family legacy meets leadership challenges. I'm Alex Mendez, a family enterprise advisor with over 18 years of experience helping business families worldwide navigating the complexities of generational transition, governance, and how they can professionalize themselves. In each episode, you will hear real stories, hard decisions, and valuable lessons from families who, like yours, are working to build trust, grow their companies, and preserve their legacy across generations. If something here resonates with your family or your business, and you'd like to explore it more deeply, I'm here to help you. Let's begin. Today, I'm joined by Peter Begalla, a trusted colleague and longtime thought partner in the family enterprise world. Peter is a psychologist, entrepreneur, and former professor who has spent over 2 decades working with family businesses on transitions, succession, and governance. In this conversation, Peter blends academic insight with real-time experience. From running a tech startup with his father, to teaching family business dynamics at Stetson University, to advising multi-generational families across the globe. What can you expect in this episode? Why values must evolve across generations, and how to translate them into action. How family dynamics silently shape decision-making in businesses. Why succession isn't about letting go, it's about building trust and defining roles. The difference between moral authority and operational authority is how it impacts leadership transitions. The 3 practices shared by families who have thrived for over 100 years. If you are part of a family business facing generational change, this episode will challenge your assumptions and inspire practical reflection. Follow me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Comment any doubts you might have and the topics you would like to listen here in this podcast. And if anything of this conversation resonates with you, or you would like to explore how your family could become a real engine for impact, connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's begin. So welcome to the show of the Business Family, Peter.
Great, thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Good to see you. I always love projects that you're working on. So congratulations on this platform.
Thank you, Peter. So tell us a little bit about you, about this beginning of your career 25 years ago in terms of education, and what brought you to helping families in this field.
Sure. It actually started because my dad was, uh, he always wanted to be on his own. He had worked for IBM and then he started a marketing and communications firm in his early 30s. And so, roll forward, my sisters and I are going through high school and his marketing and communications firm is blossoming. And then my sisters started working for him out of college, and I thought they were crazy. There was a lot of overlap between, what's going on for Christmas and who's doing dinner, and then the video shoot that's coming up with the Coast Guard, and all kinds of blurred boundaries, if you will. And I went off, got married, got a master's degree in counseling psychology, and was thinking that I would be on my own, just as a private practitioner. And for a lot of different reasons, I ended up in business with my dad doing online continuing education in 2000. So we built learning management systems. We created continuing education on the internet in the early days of the internet, and conferred CEUs for psychologists, social workers, pharmacists, the like, and we partnered with state and national associations. In that time period of working with my dad, the Stetson University, which was one of the earlier family business programs here in the US, got wind that I was working with my dad and sent students over to talk to me. And they were asking questions that were basically in two different parts of my life that I was pretty intrigued about. First was they were asking questions about psychological well-being and relationship dynamics within my family and, power and control and just all of those things around family functioning, family systems. And then they were asking questions about that appealed to my entrepreneurial nature. I was in this, tech startup of 2000, and I was putting together a capital plan and a branding kind of exercise and what's the go-to-market strategy. And these students were asking questions in both domains, both the counseling psychology, family relationship side, and the entrepreneurial side. And so I was very intrigued. And so I started chatting with the professor at Stetson, Greg McCann, who's still in the field, a little bit in the field.
Hmm.
And he said, "Hey, will you help me teach?" And so in 2003, I started co-teaching and then teaching within a couple of years, family business dynamics and family business courses at Stetson University. I taught until 2017.
Let's make a
Uh,
pause there, Peter. Going back to the relation with your dad, did something change when you began working with your dad and the relation with your sister in those terms, or not?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. My dad and I needed a little bit of a platform to connect, quite frankly.
Hmm.
My sister had passed away, and my
Sorry.
dad was going through some grieving, and he was not necessarily going back to his marketing and communications company. He didn't really feel the need to do that financially and just emotionally, but he was intrigued in having a relationship with me, and I was intrigued in having a relationship with him. And so, in many ways, this business was a platform for us to connect post the death of my sister,
Hmm.
in a way for me to help kind of keep my dad in the world, um, versus just be kind of off in the, Colorado mountains, hiking all the time. And so, I saw it as a platform for connection. My sister, she's like, well, hang on, you're investing all the family money into this business, was part of the background thinking.
Hmm.
And then just time and energy and, is this the right thing for my dad to be doing? There wasn't necessarily jealousy, there was just concern. And so it did change the family a little bit,
Okay.
definitely.
And talking about family dynamics, because you talked about it when you were teaching at the Stetson University, have you seen this as a rule of law in the different families you've been able to work in the past 20 years? How the dynamics of the families affect the dynamics of the business itself?
Oh yeah, I mean for sure. I mean you have relationship patterns and how families talk to each other or debate issues. Are they loud? Are they quiet? Do they avoid conflict? Do they embrace objectivity, or is it all impassioned, subjective kind of feeling-based arguing? The tone, texture, and culture of the family certainly animated in the economic engines that they're connected to, be it a family office, be it an operating company, be it a foundation. The values and principles and just kind of the culture of the family starts to, if it's not reflected in how the family is operating, the family feels some dissonance with it, and will with the economic engine and start to try to make sure that it reflects their values, good or bad values. I mean, you can understand somebody who's been a power and control kind of, just using a rather large outsized kind of example, somebody who's into power and control and yelling to get their way, that becomes the norm at the office, and
Hmm.
comes the norm within the system. If somebody has fairly loose ethical kind of construct around use of proceeds or expense accounts, not necessarily bad, but not necessarily the strictest rule
Hmm.
of, a conservative way to think about expensing the kind of normal stuff of a business. That then is kind of permeated out to, all right, let's cut this corner, let's do that, we can do this. It becomes quite flexible. So those are again are outsized kind of examples, but certainly the family and negative examples, but certainly the family's ethos and how they are is animated in the economic engines that they're connected to.
Yeah, well, you touched something that it's been already very, very important for me in when I talk to families or systems of families. Values come on as part of an issue because every time I talk to a family, I say, "Have you been searching for your real values to make the homework of doing that?" Nobody does it. Almost anybody does it. So, what do you think are how important you think the values are, or identify the common values that they share in order to try to define a purpose and a vision for the future for a family when they begin to think we have to do something as a family to
Yeah,
transcend.
yeah, if you're wanting this to go on, or by necessity, economic necessity, or any number of reasons why it needs to go on, the values become a unifying thread across populations, across all shareholders, not just the family, but to stakeholders, to your banks, to your employees. Everybody starts to norm to the values. And the family may have had values of high integrity, perseverance, high work ethic, and graceful discourse, a very kind and gentle
Mhm.
family. And, how that gets operationalized in each and every generation, how those values get actually put into action is, does change. Integrity and being of service looked very different for a company in 1950
Mhm.
than it does in 2022. And so each generation has to make those values, has to reaffirm them. Hey, are these still what we like, or are we starting to change? And then second, what does that look like today? And one of my favorite examples is there was a conference many years ago where a gentleman on the stage said, "Hey, if we, practice the values as my mom thought about them in 1967,
Mhm.
we would be in so many lawsuits today if we
Wow.
practiced them the same way that she practiced them then, and mostly around employment law here in the US."
Mhm.
And the next statement was, but have we ignored the values that she espouses? No. Have we adapted them to today's environment? And have we kept to the spirit of those? Certainly we have. And there's an article in Family Business Magazine by Dennis Jaffe, Dennis, Barbara Spector, the old editor, and myself. We're really talking about this a lot about how values are absolutely critical for generational transition, or
Mhm.
to unify a population of people, and but that they change in terms of how they're expressed.
Yeah, and you touch a word that say adapt. And in this environment that everything's changing, nothing's static, and the family changed and the business changed. What do you think have been, in your experience, from all the systems you have worked with, the main issues or changes that had happened from one generation to the next one in terms of leadership and pursuing the same goals in the future?
Yeah, so this adaptation, each person is going to do something a little bit differently, but there are echoes of family patterns or leadership patterns, or how decisions are made may echo the previous generation. And I think it's really important to identify what worked, or how a certain pattern or leadership style, or a decision-making style or decision-making platform served the family enterprise, and how it did not. So how does this decision-making body serve us, and how does it not? And what that does is it gives you a gap analysis. It gives you a way to say, oh, this is what's working, and wait a minute, that's not the optimal state because it falls down in these areas. And it allows the individual or the system or the board or the family council or whatever platform to say, here's how. what's working and here's what's not, and here's what needs to be adapted. So, for example, you could have a family council that is within a large, 80 family shareholder system. And the family council, and this is a common thing, and people kind of know this, it drifts towards just party planning,
Hmm.
getting everybody together, thinking about stuff. And as a result, the board and the family are somewhat disconnected from each other. And they end up having a scenario in which the shareholder objectives, what do the family shareholders really want from the company, are blurry, unclear, interpreted through politics of, who can get the ear of the board member to kind of influence it. And as a result, the company starts to languish. You don't have clear shareholder objectives or shareholder goals, and the board doesn't necessarily, board and management don't necessarily have what they should be shooting for. They're only guessing. Or the board and management are going off in a direction that the shareholders are displeased with. And so the family council has to evolve to maybe a family ownership council or an ownership council that's separate from the family council so that you can represent the shareholders' interests. And so your system has to adapt and evolve over time. And I do see increasing complexity, um, but at the same time, simplicity of family enterprise governance. So where multiple things were housed in one person, at the wealth creator stage or the first generation, you start to increase complexity to boards, to owners' councils, family councils, shareholder meetings, those kinds of things, versus just one person. But that increasing complexity of entities also simplifies the system in terms of what is the mandate or what is the focus of each of those places versus one person or one body with multiple roles and multiple kind of constituents it's trying to serve.
But
So,
you talked about several things. First, communication is a key issue among families, and it's a critical issue because most of the families, when you ask them, "Do you communicate yourself well?" they say yes, but everybody communicates very superficial, not very deep in those
yeah,
terms. And the other thing is governance or decision making. So, because
yeah,
when you have a patriarch, he's used to make decisions himself. So, sharing decision with his daughters or sons is a difficult one. So that's why governance systems helps in those terms. How do you think is critical for a family that has begun as a patriarch, has almost any processes in those terms, no governance structures, no family ownership, corporate governance? How do you think that it helped them apply those best practices in order to transcend?
yeah. So you hit on it in the beginning, which is, a, an authentic dialogue about what's going on with another person. So you can, your example, you can take you know, the quintessential kind of patriarch or matriarch who takes it all on. I've got it, I can do it all, and doesn't necessarily talk to other people. At They may give, a conversation over here, but it's only this wide. It's not the full breadth of what's happening. They may have another conversation with another individual, and it's only this wide. And so they're picking and choosing, and then they're making the decision and putting it forward. And the step is really upon both parties, both those kids, maybe, or a trusted advisor, and that individual to have a full conversation, the whole 360 degrees, all the way around the challenges, issues, opportunities, feelings, as well as objective kind of hard facts of the situation. Um, to have a full conversation about
Mhm.
that, an authentic conversation where somebody has insight and understanding, somebody feels heard, somebody feels safe to express that. Both parties have to feel safe. And as a result, that decision making, just that sharing starts to open up the possibility for decision making.
And building trust.
Build trust. Leccione's, five dysfunctions of a team, put it into one person, just like, "Eh, I'm not going to talk to anybody about this. I can't, you have to be able to trust that other people have aligned interest, it's similar values, and want to move things forward. And of course, there's going to be differences, and those differences are helpful. But you can build trust across those differences and gain alignment of, where we're going and how we're going to do it. The collaborative nature of decision making is a double-edged sword, right? It's time, energy, money, but it does prove more durable in larger, family enterprises that have, you know, multiple family shareholders, or you wish them to have multiple family shareholders. One of the things I always think about is, do you want, think of yourself as that younger generation, and your father or your mother is telling you exactly what to do, and you're 35 years old, or you're 45 years old, or 50 years old, and put yourself in the shoes, of that individual, and having command and control. Well, this is how it's going to go. And if you don't give that individual autonomy to make, or you don't recognize, I won't say give, you don't recognize that that individual is going to be making decisions and living and choosing how they live, where they go in their life, you're going to have rebellion, you're going to have anger, you're going to have resentment, you're going to have a kid all the rest of your life versus somebody who's really participating with you in decision making and understanding the complexity of the family enterprise governance system.
But the only way to begin learning how to make decisions when the next generation comes in is practice and get together
Yeah.
and make decisions together. Because when the father or the mother, they're not gonna be there. They're gonna have to be making decisions, the siblings, and makes it a lot more complex when the next generation, which is going to be the cousins, comes
Yeah.
in, and this is going to be a consortium of cousins. So decision making is going to be a key issue in terms of putting together. How do you think governance structures help them in business decisions and in family decisions, putting together to be more assertive in those sense?
Yeah, I would say, just starting and small decisions that that you can get across the line are really, really helpful. And because you build precedent, and you build like, oh, okay, we did pretty well with this one. Let's handle the next one. Are we ready for this one? And so you build muscle memory, like, and pattern recognition. This is, when this kind of issue comes up, this is how we make a decision as a cousin group. Your question gets at, rules of the road, rules of engagement, which are born out of the values of the family. And so, how we treat each other when we're going to make these decisions. This is the type of decision, this is, the platform that this type of decision comes to, that's the board, or this kind of decision goes to the council, this kind of decision goes out to shareholders. That's just normal family enterprise governance 101. And then having everybody stay within their lane and speak, plainly to the issues and opportunities and how they feel about it and what they want to see happen is a little bit of the trick. Because if you have politics and, identity issues among those people trying to assert control or gain recognition, or um, try to, have it go their way, you end up not necessarily with an open and full dialogue. You end up with agendas, personal agendas. And so somebody needs to be watching out for that and taking care of that. But, you got to start. You have to start, and you have to start with, decisions you can get across the line.
So, what are your thoughts in terms of when a somebody's beginning a business and as an entrepreneur says, do I need some governance structures in order to make better decisions, or should I wait 20 years, 25 years until I did them? What are your thoughts in that sense?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be overly formal, but it has to be disciplined, whatever it is. And disciplined means, this time of year I think about these things and I write down this. Here's my financial review. Here's how I look at audits. Here's how I look at my strategy. And here's when I look at my strategy. And a board, especially if you're, north of, if you've got a fair number of employees, probably north of, 30 to 40 employees, that's when it can kind of kick in. I mean, most of the families that we're talking about are larger. They have a significant, asset base. They have maybe a family office, some other stuff. But any sort, if they're younger and newer, you know, any sort of disciplined decision making is helpful. And the sooner you get other people contributing to that, it could be independent board members or advisors, or your family, the better, because it challenges you as an individual to kind of open up, share what's going on, get input and feedback before a decision is made. And then giving those people real authority is also incredibly helpful because it shows that you're serious about it and not just wanting to keep control.
You mentioned something that it's always been very important for me when I advise a system and tells them the importance of having independent board members, not related to the family or to a provider or supplier or
Yeah.
whatever, to be totally independent. What do you see the role of independent members in an advisory board and a formal board that help the family and the business itself make better decisions?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical, and good, board members who are independent have, the ability to articulate a viewpoint, and get it understood, and make decisions without too much deference to the family, but to understand the family and what their larger goals are, and have the interest of all shareholders, not just, the major shareholder or the person who pulled you in, but have the interest of all shareholders in mind. You're gonna get really good opinions. You're gonna get good thoughts. You're gonna get good analysis. And the discussion across all those different viewpoints. Let's say you have three or four independents along with a handful of family member directors, you're going to end up with a pretty good picture of what you're facing and how to address it. And you got to allow the chemistry of that board to kind of take root and go. And they'll enjoy it. They'll enjoy the discussion. They'll enjoy the objective and robust debate about the issues that are facing the firm. And you will have a good decision on the other side of that you can stand on. And if the decision is rough and doesn't quite work, then the board changes or the shareholders come in and go, hey, that didn't quite work. Well, can you look at this again? The other thing independent members do is it allows the family to have, some level of comfort that it's not just Uncle Johnny's, whims that are guiding the family, and the enterprise, that there are other people looking at this and thinking about it from an accountability standpoint, from a support standpoint, from a market strategy standpoint. You have other people who are there, kind of contributing to where this is going. And I have seen an independent member come in and present to family shareholders and say, hey, your family member CEO is doing a great job. And let me tell you why. And they back it up with evidence and they feel a lot better.
Yeah.
Or, hey, your family member CEO is doing a great job, but they're also dealing with this kind of issue and we've coached them on it. So the family shareholder feels a lot better that there's somebody independent assessing this. And I, as the family member, may be biased in my assessment of my uncle who took my job or, wrecked my car 20 years ago and I'm still mad at him or thinks of me as a kid. And so the unbiased, independent, director can give you a fuller picture, and give you, more objectivity and assurance that of where the position of the company, the health and well-being of any family member who might be in a leadership position.
Yeah, but let me pick your brain on something that I would say the woo word or the scary word, which is
Yeah.
succession.
Yeah.
When you talk about succession with any leader in a company or or even the executive team, what about your succession plan? Is say, what am I going to do next? What is my next role? They don't want me here. And for the patriarch, succession is not a nice tackle word to address. What do you think has been the role of an advisory board or a board of directors with independence in tackling this issue in specific succession?
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. I chair a nominating governance committee, and here's our emergency plan if the CEO goes down. Here's our, moderately urgent plan, and here is our, hey, well-paced, this is the next inflection point we see for a transition, and we have that plan in place too. Um, and you know, the independent directors, their job is to support as well as keep the CEO accountable, the board as a whole. And that includes succession. And if it is a family member, it is then saying, what's your time horizon? What's the next phase of your life look like post, service to the family? What's your thoughts on the types of profile of candidate to lead this company in the next phase? You have to be able to establish a realistic conversation with that CEO or family leader, and even chairman, whoever's in the chair role, you have to have that conversation as well. What's the next chair of this board look like? You may have a non-family CEO in there already, and a family chair is not quite as, vigorous, or you can kind of see the tenure of that family chair kind of starting to wane, and another type of chair is needed, either personality by force of personality or experience, and what the company may be needing in the next stage. And I think the board is critical. I think the board allows for, a more objective framework to be applied to that conversation, with the family member, either in the CEO or chair role, and say, what are we coming up on? And then that group of, whoever it is, but primarily the board members, looking at succession and creating that, who do we talk to about the profile for the next CEO? Is it just the current CEO? Probably not. Is it just the board? Probably not. Is it just the shareholders who get to pick? Probably not. Is it just the employees who get to pick? Probably not. It's probably all of them to some degree helping to build the profile of the next individual, and then getting coherence around that description and profile and what the company needs. And then having a fulsome conversation about timing and pacing, and with the recruiting process, the vetting and interviewing and vetting, and then the onboarding process of that individual. The board has to, in my opinion, has to be very active in that role of helping the succession. And I want to call out two things, and you may have seen this, Alejandro, where there's operational control of the company, but then what I call moral authority tends to kind of stick around, especially for those older, wealth creator types who are in the system. And the moral authority, can have really big gravity, and all of the stakeholders can still look at that individual. Have you been able to help families? Yeah, they've navigated they have a new CEO, but there's still somebody in the system who everybody defers their opinion to. Have you seen that? And how
Well,
have you dealt
definitely,
with
I've
that?
seen it, and it's tough. It's tough for the family, and it's tough for the business because this figure of somebody that always relates to them. So that's why it's very important for them to have well-defined roles and responsibilities, and a time frame for them to say, "I'm going to step out totally out of the company." In terms of nobody can call me in that sense, so they can begin to make their own decisions, and the family begins to relate to this, either the external CEO or the next generation family CEO of the company. I've seen it. I've seen it several times.
Yeah.
But you've been have the chance to work with Danny Jaffe in these 100 years families around the world. What do you think has been the key things that have repeat themselves? Doesn't matter if they're in Asia, in the States, Mexico, or Europe or Central America, that repeat themselves in every family that has had the chance to transcend from one generation to the next one.
Sure. Dennis has taken this framework that I use a little bit farther into generative families, but early on in the research, this was around 2013, he published a paper that said, hey, there's three solid pathways when we look at these families from across the world who are 100 years old or more. There's three sets of principles and practices that fall under three big buckets or pathways, as he called them. And I keep finding that these are true. Families who are successful do essentially have principles and practices in th these three areas. The first one is nurturing the family. The family has a sense of purpose that's beyond the economic engines. They like to get together. They affirm the bonds of family. There's a familyness, if you will, to them that's pretty strong. Um, they nurture the sense of family. So nurturing the family is called the pathway or the bucket. The second one is stewarding the enterprise. They take care of the economic engines. They have a diverse, empowered board that actually can make decisions. They have a strategic plan for the wealth. They kind of know what's going on. They know how these economic engines work. They have defined succession plans for operational roles. They kind of know how all of this is going to work and what the wealth is, how the wealth is going to kind of go. You can even think of your control and liquidity kind of balance points, under this stewarding the enterprise. The family has, and management team and board have kind of balanced all of that stuff. And then the third area is developing human capital. In other words, they are curious. They create a learning environment. They're not just telling the next gen, go learn and step into this leadership. They're actually saying, no, no, we have a responsibility across all generations to learn and grow and to, make sure that we're financially literate, that we're current on markets, that we're up on technology, that we're thinking about, learning and growing and being curious. And that creates a vibrancy that allows human talent to develop and flourish to contribute to the next version of the enterprise. And so those three things across those 100, year families are pretty common. And we see elements of each of those, in practice, thriving, talked about, being refined over time, from development plans to board evolution to, hey, our family meeting is a little bit better. So we see these families wanting to nurture the sense of family. We see them wanting to evolve the governance and strategy of the economic engines. And then third, they're curious about the world. They become a learning environment. They're not just telling the kids to go learn. They're actually learning as a whole system versus just one or two people. So it's pretty neat to see an enterprising family firing on all cylinders, evolving that way.
So, after studying families for over 20 years, Peter, and working with families all over the world, we've worked together with several families, you and me,
Yeah.
in those as a team. What has been, or the recommendation you would say, in order to close this conversation, for families that are thinking about we have to do something, we don't know where to begin, and it's scary in this sense. What would you recommend for these families that are listening to this podcast?
Yeah, the first thing get together as a family and say, hey, we're coming up on a transition. I would like to see this family, go on. Here's the economic realities. And just declare that. And
Openness.
then, yes, yeah, oh yeah, you have to be open, and that'll build trust. And then the next step around, well, what do we do next? We all right, well, let's create a succession plan. Oh, let's create a board. There's some pressure that I'm sure that the family is already feeling to create or have gotten suggestions from their YPO group or somebody else as to where to go. But just starting, you have to start the conversation. And the best place to start is within your family or within your board of directors if you have one. Like, hey guys, we're ready for the next version of this. And if that's succession, great. If that's the creation of a formal shareholder meeting, great. If that's the evolution or the creation of your first independent directors on the board, great. Whatever it is, you just get started and the enterprise structure starts to grow and thrive, and your financial goals that you may have start to be realized in short order, quite frankly. I've seen it work wonders on the economic side as well as on the family side. So.
Yeah,
Oh, that's the other thing,
yeah.
real quick. The longer I've been doing this and the older the families, uh, all of the people who are over 70, if they've been thinking about this and working on it just even a little bit, I would say close to 100% of them say, oh, yeah, if the family's strong, we can pretty much do anything. So, that's where the real work is. If the family, and it may not be in your image as to what strength looks like. You may have an outdated image of what a healthy, financially, vibrant family looks like. But if you start working on just basic relationship, basic communication, and the purpose of the family, you would be surprised at how fast everything else falls in line.
So I would end this conversation with, if a stronger is the strong is the family, anything can be done for the
Yep.
future. We're facing a huge challenge now as the humanity. We've changing wealth, the biggest change in wealth in the history of the humanity because of the baby boomers.
Yep.
So in the next
Now, right now.
now, from next 10 to 15 years, the biggest change in wealth is going to be changing hands. So we better prepare the next generation to what are they going to be facing in that sense.
Yeah, and they're totally ready. The next generation's very ready. If there's some safety in how that conversation is done and it's psychologically sound for them to participate, they are more than willing to be in there. So, and they're ready to take on that responsibility and then some.
But we have to let them make those
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
decisions.
yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Peter, for this conversation and
Good.
well-being for your family.
All right. Good. Good. Thanks.
Take
Good to
care.
see you.
Peter Begalla leaves us with timeless takeaways, drawn from decades of observing and advising family businesses. Start small, but start. Building trust, communication, and governance begins with one honest conversation. Structure brings clarity. As families grow, they need differentiated roles, rules of engagement, and decision-making forms. Succession isn't a handoff, it's a transformation. The older generation must step back with intention, and the next gen must step in with support. Independent board members are a game changer. They provide objectivity, accountability, and help diffuse family politics. Strong families are the engine, as Peter reminds us. If the family is strong, we can do anything. If you're thinking it's time to do something, you're not alone. Whether it's succession, governance, or preparing the next generation, I'm here to help you. The easiest way to reach out with me is LinkedIn. Let's connect and explore your path forward. Thank you for listening to Business in Families. See you next time.